Hello and welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter. I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses in New York, or if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. Let me get some more of that there. Okay, now. So I got a question recently. I'm not straight, sorry. About carrying costs and really what are carrying costs in real estate. So let's explain really what that means, because really what it means is how much is it going to cost for you to hold the property. Now, if you're buying something to buy and hold, you're not going to call them carrying costs because those are just your monthly expenses, right? You're going to have taxes and insurance and repairs and whatever utilities you're going to pay. Those are simple costs. But for carrying costs, it usually means on a short-term deal. So if it's property that you're going to, let's say, flip, that you're going to fix and do major rehab, or sometimes I do wholesale deals. Wholesale deal to me is something where I close on it, I take possession of it, and then I'm going to do no work to it, or I'm going to do minimal work to it, and then I'm going to sell it to put it on, list it for sale, and sell it to an end user, a regular buyer. So there are significant carrying costs in New York, much more than in other places. Now, you see carrying costs, that almost implies that I'm not including closing costs. So I'm going to explain this sort of in two ways. Most of the time, carrying costs means what's it going to cost for you to hold the property. So you have to figure in those things that I just said. You have to figure in what your taxes are. And in New York, it's very common, at least in my area, to have taxes of at least $1,000 a month or more. If you have a loan on the property, and very often I borrow money, I have interest costs, and then any kind of utilities you have to pay. And in general, even if you're doing no work, you need to have electricity on. In the winter, for sure, you're going to need oil or gas on there. Some places are heated electrically, but then you certainly need more electricity. You're going to need landscaping in the spring and summer, because if you don't cut the grass, you're going to get a violation. I've gotten that, unfortunately, many times. And you're going to have snow removal in the winter, because you're also going to get a violation if you don't have the sidewalk and just a sidewalk shovel. Those are some of the carrying costs. But when I think of a carrying cost on, let's say, a wholesale deal, so a property that I'm going to do nothing to, I sort of figure in my closing costs on the purchase and my closing costs on the sale. And for people out of New York, or even people in New York that haven't done this before, you may want to sit down for what I'm about to tell you. Because very often, my cost to buy a property, hold it for just a few months while a end user gets their mortgage, and then to sell the property can be upwards of $50,000, 50. Now, how does those numbers work? My closing costs on a buy usually run around $10,000. So let's break those down. I have a legal fee, several $1,000s. I have title charges, several $1,000s. Very often there's a tax payment due within 60 days. They're going to charge me, so I'm going to pay some property taxes. And if I'm borrowing money from a lender, I'm going to have lender costs too. $10,000 is not outrageous at all. And when I sell a property, it's common for me to have maybe $15,000 in closing costs. So why is it more? Usually I'm going to have to pay a buyer's agent 2% from selling a property for $500,000. That's already $10,000 in just 2% right there. Then I'm going to have any taxes that were due, right? Which I may be repeated as I get into carrying costs, but tax payments that are due, and title charge. So I'm going to pay recording fees on a deed. I'm going to pay transfer tax. So $15,000 comes. That's $25,000 already. Now, if I have a property, even if it goes quickly, it's going to take me a month to find a buyer, and it's going to take that buyer 2 to 3 months to find a loan. So for 3 to 4 months, very common, sometimes more. I have to pay interest costs on that. That's the carrying costs we said. Taxes, which we pay at the end, but some, they're due month, they're not due monthly, so I'll pay them at the end, but those are accruing. Sometimes I have penalties because I missed a payment. And then all those things I said. So utilities, maintenance, right? Somebody breaks in, I got to deal with it. I've had squatters move in. I went through a lot of videos about squatters. So then I have to buy cameras to put up, and things that have to be repaired. So it's very easy to get to $500,000. And I would say my mid-range properties are probably about $50,000. Higher end, so if I'm buying something like in the 6s or 7s, it might be $60,000 in carrying costs, right? Which is the cost that I have to do no work to the property, or almost no work to the property. I'm not counting the work, any expense for the work, just to buy it, find a buy for me to buy it, find a buyer to sell it to, and wait a few months for them to get their loan. That's how much it can cost. All right, I had a property recently. It cost me $62,000 to do nothing to it. I did zero work to it. Found the buyer after 2 days. So these are the things that I don't teach you in most of the gurus who teach you how to do this, because it's different in New York, right? In most states, closing costs can be a few $100, right? In Carolina, people telling me it's $600 closing costs. They want to double close, it's an extra $600. Who cares? But in New York, our closing costs are ridiculously high, right? And because our prices are so high, then the interest costs are high. And because our taxes are so high, that adds to everything. So very, very common if you're going to buy a property. So people tell me all the time, I get these calls all the time, and they say, hey, I got this deal. I can buy it for $370. It's worth $400,000. I say, it's not a deal. They go, why not? There's $30,000 in spread. I go, because it's going to cost you $50,000 to buy it and sell it. And they go, what the hell are you talking about? And I go, closing costs on the buy. And I go through everything I just discussed. And people's heads, they almost don't believe it. They think I'm crazy, right? But I'm not crazy, because I've done this hundreds of times. And I can tell you that you need to figure in what your costs are going to be to keep the property. Now, people tell me all kinds of things all the time. They tell me, oh, this area is going to be great. Just buy everything and hold it. That's a short-sighted kind of thought. Now, is it possible if I had an unlimited amount of money, could I buy properties and hold them? Two problems with that. Number one, I don't like to buy properties on anticipation of appreciation, right? Because we don't know that properties are going to go up. In fact, I can tell you without a doubt that properties are going to come down at some point. So I certainly don't want to be banking properties. Now, there are people who have a lot of money who do that, and they've done well over the years. In the long term, if they don't ever feel that they're going to need to sell, they can wait until the market comes up. But all these carrying costs that I told you add up, right? And if you're going to bank properties, you're going to have to keep paying on it. Now, again, if you're extremely wealthy and the thought of spending $20,000 or $30,000 a year to keep a property doesn't matter to you, then do it. But to me, I don't like doing that. I really don't. And I don't like keeping properties, worrying about what's going to happen to them. Is somebody going to move in there that I'm going to have to then evict? Right? It's crazy what squatters have incredible amount of legal rights in our state. Are things going to happen to it? Is it going to deteriorate? Are there going to be problems? Is the pipe going to break in the winter? All kinds of the usual crap that happens when a property is vacant. And I don't want to hold properties that are vacant. So if you're going to keep a property like that and you're going to rent it, then do that, as long as you're cash flow positive enough that the wear and tear that the tenant is going to put on the property is worth it. Right? I had a property once where I was going for a variance, and I got to subdivide the property, and took a year, and I got denied, and I took another year, finally got approved, but I didn't rent it out, and I was an imbecile. I should have rented it out. Right now, my thinking was wrong. My thinking is wrong a lot. I try to learn from my wrong thinking to get right thinking. My thinking was that, well, I'm going to get approved for this variance right away, and I'm going to have to kick these people out, and they may not leave. And I was stupid. Right? If you can have a property that's cash flow positive, get it cash flow positive. Just be clear with the tenants about what your expectations are. So I have a property right now where I have non-cooperative tenants upstairs, and I was not planning to put tenants downstairs. I put tenants downstairs, but I told them, listen, it's a 6-month lease. I might extend. You'll probably be month to month after that. I'm hoping I can get tenants out around that time. That was a couple of months ago, so in 4 months. But the idea that now I have cash flow coming from that property, it was a much better idea. And even though it cost me many thousands of dollars to get the downstairs ready because it was in terrible condition, I'm much happier now that I have money coming in from the property. So, being a landlord is part of this business. A lot of people don't like being landlords. A lot of people say I'm never going to rent. But the truth is, if you have an asset that you can't deal with now, and I'm buying several properties now where I'm going to try and subdivide, I'm going to rent them out until then. And I think it's better to have a cash flow producing, cash flow positive asset than one that's a drain. That's my thought. So carrying costs are significant in our area because of the taxes, because of the interest costs on the high prices that we have, because of all the things that come with it. And closing costs are incredibly high. So you have to take those things into account. If you don't, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Mistakes that I've made that I'm trying to help you not make. So I hope this was helpful. If you are interested in other ways that can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you are interested in my course that teaches how to do this, go to howtoflipnewyorkcourse.com. If you're interested in my coaching, go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. if you are watching on any platform, please click like. The thumbs up really help me. I want to thank you. And please keep the comments coming. The comments help me. I go live 5 times a week. And to be honest, some days I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to talk about. So I look at the comments and I use that as subject matter, and it really helps. And there are no bad comments. So if you ask a question, and I literally every day go through these. If you ask a simple question, I'll just send you back an answer or reply with an answer. If it's a question about a topic that I've covered before, I'll just send you links to the videos. I sent somebody links to 2 videos yesterday. I think they were asking about attorneys. And if it's a new topic or something I haven't covered in a while, I'll do a video on it. But please keep the comments coming. I really, really appreciate all the kind words that people have been saying. As crazy as it sounds, the words is coming out of my mouth, and it's nuts. I think I'm the only person teaching how to do this in New York. I think I'm the only person who's doing it and teaching how to do it, how to be a real estate investor in New York, which is insane, considering how many people we have in the state and considering the fact that there are a lot of people doing it. But it's very different in New York, and it's my pleasure to help anybody watching in any way that I can. My office phone number is on the page. You can call me if you have any questions, and I'm here to help you in any way that I can. Thank you very, very much for watching.